So many babes, so little time. Groovy. Holy cow. Shake it, baby. If it bleeds, I can kill it. Cool.
Hi, I'm Matt, and this is Duke, and today I'm playing... No, I'm not going to be playing Duke Nukem Forever for you, because... I'm for anyone that's even passingly familiar with Duke the Fourth, you might be aware that the game isn't even really that bad. It's way worse than that, because it's actually just boring. You walk around in bland areas, squished between long loading screens, talking to the same man.unreal and woman.unreal models over and over, interspersed between some long slogs of Duke Nukem Forever. So instead of subjecting you to all that tedium, I'm going to be guiding your hips through the game in a fun but professional manner. Now, speaking of fun, that's precisely what I didn't have while I sat there and beat Duke Nukem Forever. This is all my footage, and we're gonna be seeing the highs and the lows, and I'll just cut out everything in between. So, without further ado,
Let's rock.
Now, admittedly, DNF kicks off with this kinda cool intro. It's cool in the sense that it takes you through, chronologically, the events of Duke Nukem 3D, one of my favorite games as a teeny bopper. Hell, Duke 3D is one of the first and only games I remember downloading shit for. Expansion packs, total conversions, mods, etc. I gots to have the real pixelated, non-pasty covered sprite nipples.
Holy shit.
Cause I was a
hardcore gamer.
Now, this intro is not kinda cool cause it's animated so terribly. Like, some shots are fine and some are just not. It also goes on a bit too long, but I get what they were going for. Not sure if this was something that was cooked under the iron curtain of Gearbox or it was something started by 3D Realms, but regardless, it's still kinda shocking it's so not great. It's like one step above cutscenes from some lesser titles.
As I speak to you now, a great white shark is finding its way toward our shores, guided by its own instinct and our superior will.
But then there's some explosions, and they're overpowering, and Duke here, over the competition, he's towering. Cause honestly, this is a nice little title screen. You know, things are probably gonna get rough when I'm complimenting title screens. Oh, and by the way, thanks so much for the bomb-ass intro to Snacks. It's literally my favorite part of this project. So next we have a loading screen. Now, I'm no number scientist, but I'd wager you spend a good 18% of your total playtime in DNF not playing DNF. You're just staring at the screen. Maybe it loads faster on the PC, but I paid $3 for this 360 copy, and the Steam version costs... fuck that, and 99 cents. Still loading, by the way.
This is taking forever. Time to stop pissing around and get this big guy back into action.
The game then starts off with you being forced to urinate, which I'm sure was goddamn hilarious in 1997, or 2001, or maybe even 2006, but not so much in 2011. But you can pee in any of the urinals you can see in this locker room, so score +1 for freedom. Next we have something about Duke Nukem Forever that I just love, unironically love, which is this terrible, horrible jumping animation. Okay, well you can't appreciate it from first person, but you can when facing a mirror. Why's it gotta be like that? Why are Duke's arms look super glued to his sides? Why did they have John St. John record just one short humph for jumping? I can tell you why. Cause it's fucking funny, and they knew it. So the next thing that happens, that Duke mannequin jumps over to these EDF guys, and I guess the writer's room for Duke Nukem Forever decided to sneak in a South Park joke.
Step 3 is, profit?
There you go. Now, Underpants Gnomes first aired in 1998. Let that sink in nice and deep into your brain pores. this joke probably stayed in the game for the entirety of its 12-year development cycle ever since it was first announced in '97. In some ways, DNF is such an amazing time capsule, but not in the cool, oh, look at this old stuff way, but more in the, oh, look at this old stuff. And over here, you can draw. This is a thing that Duke Nukem Forever loves shoving in your face about every 7.5 seconds. You can interact with a lot of shit, which, again, would have been neat when the game was targeting a 2001 release date, but, I mean, nowadays, not so much. By the way, this is going to be a running theme. Still though, you can draw. So, I drew. Now this is where things just get kinda weird. Since the plan to attack the rampaging aliens is a go, you are now allowed to engage. Duke can throw out Jack Thompson and Tom O'Leary here, which is neat, but I don't know why Duke's boot is outlawed. Is it because it's too powerful and would trivialize the rest of the game? Probably not, but I wish it was. Either way, it's fine, I guess. What's less fine is that this sequence also sets a strange precedent, one where the first hour or so the game actively seems to want to stop the player from, shooting stuff. I don't know why this is so, considering you can start shooting in Duke 3D in the first, millisecond. Either way, you soon get a look at DNF's version of the Assault Troopers from 3D. Remember these guys and their distinctive color palettes and sprite design? Well, now they're just a mushy mulch of gray textures, which unfortunately is one of my main beasts with the game and is sadly something that could have been tweaked. Everything has this ugly, desaturated look to it, from the skybox to the weapons, character models, just everything. Maybe they were trying to make some type of statement on the proliferation of gray military shooters in the marketplace, but considering we just saw a 12-year-old South Park joke, that's probably giving the developers too much credit. Point being, the game is just kinda bland to look at, and considering it takes place in Las Vegas, that's some type of mind-blowing anti-accomplishment. Moving on, a cycloid is ripping up the field of the Las Vegas Detonators, which is a cool team name and smacks of the XFL, so this bit is 100% J Hunter approved. We get a very brief taste of killing stuff here, as Duke is given a pair of Devastators, which, as a kid, when I first saw the name in the Duke 3D instruction booklet, imagine him strapping two Constructicon combiners on his arms. Now, you simply circle strafe this boss, mindlessly firing away until the EDF drop ammo caches to replenish your supply. Speaking of ammo... oh, yeah, I get it. There's really nothing much to this fight, so once he has died a death, you are forced into the first of 1,000 mandatory QTE sequences. Again, something I think a Duke Nukem game would have made fun of rather than embrace, but this is the timeline we are unfortunately handed. What's worse about these QTEs is that they are rarely even worth doing. They're just these long, drawn-out animations that aren't particularly visceral. If you're gonna force players to mash a button for prolonged periods of time, you gotta end with a bang rather than just a polite fart. And with that, we can see the big reveal. Duke was actually playing his own video game! And I have to admit, this is like one of the smartest things this game does, I guess. It's not smart in general, but within the frame of Duke Nukem Forever, I gotta say, a coy smile crept on my face. Now, that coy smile quickly drops, as the twins are then introduced to the player. Now, these lifeless, charmless collections of polygons are meant to titillate the player, but for me at least, failed to pretty much do so at every turn. I mean, I enjoy sexy, fun characters. Bam, wow, kapow! But these girls actually get a creepy vibe from this whole scenario, as they're clearly supposed to be an Olsen twins reference, which, considering Duke Nukem's 12-year development cycle, let's move on. Now, we start off in Duke's media room, and I find it incredibly weird that in this, the starting area of the game, you can kill yourself. I don't know, it's just really weird, and you can do it without even touching a weapon. Okay. Anyway, putting that out of our minds, we can see that Duke is living his best life in Sin City, which is a setting that's stuck around ever since the game's inception. Duke's already blasted his way through LA and Manhattan, so Vegas does make for an appropriate backdrop, and I'm glad they still used it. Duke owns his own hotel and casino called the Lady Killer, cause of course he does. And while I think it's a fun setting, it's also an example of wasted potential. Maybe if Gearbox hadn't signed an agreement to merely ship the game, but rather restart development from scratch or something with Triptych, this could have been so much more interesting. Stories like The Dark Knight Returns or any hero who's past his prime still has one last fight in him has a specific appeal, so it kinda sucks the game doesn't go this route. But how could it? It was being designed in a time when 3D Realms thought the character was still relevant, but the reality was, the FPS genre had far outgrown Duke Nukem in his original guise during that 12 years. I would have loved a grizzled, older take on Duke Nukem where he either became more cynical or self-deluded or even just soft, and had gotten rusty since he last saved the world over a decade ago. You know, still keep him in Vegas, let him have his casino, but maybe also have his fame and star power lowered a bit or even a lot. Yeah, sure, he might still have a few fanboys, but kids and women should either be oblivious to who he is, or maybe just creeped out by him. Duke's a dinosaur, and having a game where he may need to come to grips with that while saving the world one last time would have been about 1,000 times more interesting than just,
Oh my god, it's Duke Nukem!
Anyway, sorry for the diatribe, it's just wasted potential really kinda irks me. Okay, so for the next good long while, nothing happens, cause you're just walking around the Lady Killer, interacting with crap, talking to people, 2008 Christian Bale references.
Hey, it's fucking distracting!
Okay, now, let me say this. I think it's neat that the game lets you do something other than shoot stuff, giving you free reign to mess around with whatever you want. It's kind of unique. However, I don't think it should have been immediately started off with this. It's just kind of slow and kills the momentum before it even gets started. Now, I suppose this works in the
When are they gonna get to the fireworks factory?
sort of way, but ultimately I feel the better choice would have been to institute a much longer and more explosive tutorial stage that had you grabbing a basic weapon or two, clearing out a few rooms, maybe a puzzle, introduce a few gameplay features, then cap it off with a boss fight. Once all that's done, then you can eat like a dozen donuts at the Lady Killer and just dick around to your heart's content. Anyway, the main purpose of these sections is to pump up Duke's ego. Now, I kinda like this mechanic in the sense that it reminds me of the Bond moments from a variety of 007 FPSs. There were neat bonuses to seek out that gave you a better overall score. In DNF, they are the only way to permanently increase your health, so you'll be spending a lot of your time rubbing your dick against every single surface, hammering on the A button in the hope that it'll actually go towards boosting your ego. I wish these things could have been a bit more involved and, well, you know, funnier.
Who's that handsome devil?
I also wish they weren't tied to your health, but rather give you handy, but not critical buffs to Duke's abilities, like firing rate, ammo count, sprinting distance, damage, etc. Or ego could instead be like an XP system that you could then choose to spend on whatever build you want. Yeah, so for this run of Duke Nukem Forever, I'm going for a Blood Tinge. All bosses, no skips. Personally, I think ego being health is... it just doesn't work. He didn't need it in Duke 3D. It was first implemented in Manhattan Project, I think, so I don't know why it made its way here. Like, are you saying Duke's a pussy if he needs first aid? He's a flesh and blood human being and not some metaphysical representation of physical fortitude. Like, maybe 3D Realms told the Manhattan Project devs that ego is going to be the big thing, so they should slap it into their game. Either way, having a recharging health meter in 2011 was literally missing the point of Duke Nukem. It would have been refreshing to have to search for medkits or atomic health in a game at this time. Whatever. Like I said before, Gearbox is contracted to merely ship the game and not make something that would have been, fresh or interesting. So, after scarfing down all the food in the TV studio, looking at this super not cool photo of Duke murdering a protected species, and finding posters advertising Randy's next magic show, it's time to make your way over to the set of Damn It's Late, some super timely jab at late-night talk shows, I suppose. But Duke's greeted with the news that his interview has been cancelled, as everyone in Las Vegas is checking out the alien invasion. Wait, what?
On slow days, all I hear is Johnny, 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 but a couple of those aliens come down and suddenly it's all news, all channels.
The exact same aliens that Duke kicked the asses of in 1996 are back, and for whatever reason, the president explicitly trusts them now and warns Duke not to shove his smelly dick into the situation.
You are not required. Do not get involved. That's an order.
General Graves, Duke's CO, begrudgingly agrees. I actually like this bit of the story because it at least takes a shot at Duke by calling him a dinosaur. It doesn't amount to much, but hey, it's there.
You kicked their asses pretty hard last time. Maybe the president's right to say we shouldn't just assume they're here to make trouble.
I also kinda dig General Graves. I don't know, he only has a few lines here and there, but the voice actor gives it socks, and it shows that even though Duke is a one-man army, he still respects an authority figure like Trotman in Rambo or Kirby in Commando. Soon enough though, despite the president's assurances and without provocation, the aliens attack Las Vegas because of course. They target the lady killer specifically because Duke is not exactly subtle about which casino he would make. To put a stop to all this, Duke has to go to the Duke Cave, which is actually pretty funny. It's so cheesy and it doesn't necessarily feel like a Duke Nukem thing. It's silly, so it kinda works. To get to the Duke Cave, however, you have to fight a couple of really tough enemies. Load screens, and also this twerp.
No way, man, no way! I'm not leaving until I get my picture on this throne! I've waited years for this!
Once we enter the Duke Cave, we finally get to the action. But not really. Duke can now attack enemies, but you're still lacking any sort of weapon, save for your fists. After clearing out a few hallways, the game introduces finishing moves, let's call them ego kills, before Duke makes his way to his private gym. Take a moment here to get that pump, gotta get that pump. Also, throw a few quarters into balls of steel because playing any recreational games like this dulls out the most ego, so things like billiards, video games, air hockey, and the like. I gotta say, while none of these minigames are fantastic, they're playable, and it's impressive the amount of work that went into them. After that, it's time to slip into the dark inner workings of the Duke Cave. You're given a few more tutorials like night vision during this stealth section. Okay, look, I like that they're mixing things up, but a stealth section should maybe come in a bit later, like halfway through the game. We still haven't fired a single bullet-based weapon yet. Why are we stumbling around in the dark? It's so weird how they gatekeep it from you. So you sneak around, punch some enemies, while Duke tries his hand or feet at some light pipe-based platforming. You then have to collect a bunch of power cells to reboot the security defenses, with one of these cells only being obtained in a way that I feel has to be a little nod to Shadow Warrior. Use this Tyco RC monster truck to collect it, and bam, we're back in business. This is also where you get your first weapon, and it's probably the worst feeling in the game. Instead of dropping a pistol or shotgun or whatever, the troopers drop this bulky, shitty laser that I'm not even gonna name properly. I'm sorry, it feels so bad to fire, and I refuse to pick it up for any reason. After that, you have your first run-in with the Piggy Police. Again, it's mostly a mess of undefined gray and grayish blue textures, but just as in Duke 3D, these guys are a legit threat. Most of them have a long-distance leaping attack that you'll need to scoot your ass out of the way of to avoid. This does make fighting them a bit interesting, and like bacon, pork roast, or ham, they come in a few different varieties. So if you ever see one packing a weapon, start to freak out, because of all of the deaths you'll incur in DNF, it'll most likely be because of too many pig cops. And too many pig cops usually means like more than one. After you've wound your way through a very, Portal-esque hallway, a weird design choice for the Duke Cave, you finally get your first real weapon. This pistol is just handed to you via Duke's computer. This thing is fine. It has a laser sight that's kind of useless, and I don't know, again, it feels worse to shoot than 3D's pistols, so Listen, the fact that it takes so long to get your hands on this basic weapon is part of the issue. Duke's classic arsenal is dangled in front of you for so long that once you fire this, it just kind of feels like an anticlimax. Had you were given this pistol the moment you took the elevator to the Duke cave, I think it would have come off a bit better. Shortly after that, you're then strapped into Big Gun, the Dukinator rocket jockey? No. It's just a turret section, the first of many you'll be forced into for the rest of the game. You then spend a solid 5 minutes shooting at a giant alien mothership, which is about as exciting as it sounds. Unfortunately, like a lot of mechanics in DNF, there is a cooldown meter, so before it starts to get too fun, whoa, slow down there, little Duke. You gotta wait for that bad boy to cool down. Now, I guess they wanted to get the most mileage out of this sequence, but due to the cooldown bar, you can't go apeshit with this thing, so it just makes it drag on and on far longer than most other games. This again sucks any momentum that Duke was starting to have, so it might have been smarter to just shorten this whole thing or just letting you go nuts with the turret in the first place. Now, even though you've destroyed the mothership, you still kinda lose as Duke is thrown flat on his denim arse, and despite the game never not taking the opportunity to boast about his toughness, he's knocked out cold due to this little spill for about 4 hours. Unconcerned, Duke dusts himself off and makes his way through some air ducts, where he then spies 2 ladies making whoopee during an alien invasion where thousands of innocent people have been slaughtered just blocks away. Cheers. This is one of the early, weird shifts in tone that the game frequently decides to take. Duke then bumbles into a precarious elevator-based situation with another bystander begging for help. This bit is so awkward and again goes on far too long as you need to keep pumping the brakes until you start wondering if you need to keep pumping the brakes. So you might then decide to stop for a second, in which case you'll die. You know, like I did. But yeah, just keep working that lever over and over again until you win. Well, I mean, you don't win anything, you don't even get ego for doing any of this, but the woman does reward you with some subtle dialogue.
I'll go down with you anytime.
But don't walk through that door!
What the fuck?
Ah, dumb shit. Basically, this whole elevator thing was a setup for you to get shrunk, reintroducing us to one of Duke's gimmicks, shrinkage. Fortunately, and very immediately, a kid is suddenly spawned in to offer you a mighty steed.
Sweet. It really is you, Duke. You'll fit right inside my RC car.
His futuristic RC car that somehow has working mechanics let an action figure-sized man drive it around. Sure, okay, whatever. Also, his mom makes a really... she makes this comment right in front of her own child.
So tiny. What the hell? I know right where I'd stick him.
Like, I'm not even gonna kink shame here, but I have no idea how to complete that sentence. You are then treated to about 20 minutes of driving the Duke action booby buggy around the many floors of the Lady Killer, periodically jumping out to do some platforming. Honestly, I like the mini Duke platforming in this game, but at the same time, it's easy for it to overstay its welcome. This entire section, again, goes on far too long and has Duke mostly shooting at bloodthirsty rats whilst driving around poorly signposted areas. This does give the game a bit of variety, I admit, sure, but they really need to just rein it in sometimes, because there honestly hasn't been much shooting in this first-person shooter so far, so the fact it temporarily turns into a Micro Machines game this early just feels really unfocused, mostly because Duke Nukem Forever is really unfocused. You finally meet back up with the EDF and the, twins.
Oh, you're so tiny and cute. I could carry you around in my pocket like a little pet. Hot Pocket.
And also simultaneously get your next weapon, the shotgun. This is one of the few standouts of DNF's lackluster arsenal. It has a beastly sound effect when you pull the trigger, does more damage than it probably should, and is your go-to weapon for all close-range situations. That is, of course, until the game forces you to stop using it. Yes, it's time to talk about the 2-weapon limit. For reasons I can't even fathom. At some point, someone at 3D Realm said, "You know what kids like? The Halos. So let's take our franchise that has all of the weapons and just throw it in the garbage." I mean, the thing about Duke 3D is that it defied a lot of conventions. It stuck to a 2D engine and sprites in the face of the 3D revolution led by bespectacled warlock John Carmack. It pushed sex and violence to then unseen levels and had ludicrously complex and interesting maps. But DNF copies just about everything that was popular in like 2006, I guess, just in 2011. Halo was fine because it introduced that limit from the very beginning and the game was designed around it from top to bottom, but I don't feel like Duke Forever was, or at least not well. There's so many instances later on where I just wanted to use the goddamn shotgun, but it's not even an option. I run out of bullets for it eventually, but then the game only provides between the pistol or an explosive weapon when I just want the shotgun.
Give me what I want!
Now, I know the PC version got a patch that upgraded this limit to a staggering 4, but if I need to remind you, yeah, no thanks, Randy. Once you grab the shotty, you are then tasked with taking out about 24 enemies in this closed room, which is at least a pretty visceral fight. This is where the trooper guys really start abusing their teleportation gimmick though. They just do it far too much, so instead of it being interesting, it just gets incredibly tedious. Once you slaughter the lot of them, you're rewarded with some critical storyline information.
Alright, time for my reward.
Oh wait, invincible enemies appear that don't react to gunfire, and the creepy twins are taken away anyway, kinda making the whole fight feel a bit pointless. Duke also doesn't seem to care all that much that I don't know what they are to him, his girlfriends. It's kinda unclear what their dynamic even is. Wow, this is a weird thing to think about in a Duke Nukem game. Anyway, you're now stuck in this room with no visible exits except the way you came in, so guess what? You now have to backtrack on foot through that 20 minutes of casino you just raced through in the RC car equivalent of the Pussy Wagon. Now, I might be wrong, but I suspect this is where most people who are even morbidly curious about Duke Nukem Forever and maybe rented it quit. Again, this slams the brakes on any momentum the game had up to this point, as the maps in DNF aren't particularly dynamic or interesting like the build games of old, so knowing you're going to have to go through one again elicits a groan. Eventually, you'll find a new path that leads to a big gaudy statue of Mr. Nukem that is at least 100% on brand with everything we've seen so far. It's also neat it seemingly recreates the box art from Duke 3D. It'll also be your introduction to the first of dozens of instances of having to manipulate a bit of machinery to sort of kinda do maybe an environmental puzzle to get where you need to go. It's not that fun, and it's especially not that fun when the EDF guy is blocking the way slightly, forcing me in this direction to take some fire damage, but I guess that's what regenerating ego is for. So you're told that General Graves is waiting for you in the next lobby. Yeah, thanks. You're gonna have to clear a few more rooms to get to him though, and this is also where trip bombs are introduced, and I do feel that they're handled pretty well. They don't take one of your 2 precious weapon slots, so they function like grenades instead. Same goes for pipe bombs. Both options also greatly speed up some of the longer firefights, which is something I recommend. You'll then come across some more EDF guys, and unlike other NPCs such as women or little kids, EDF soldiers being Duke stands totally makes sense. They would have heard lots of war stories about the guy and might even idolize him, so yeah, while these bits are not written all that well, they do feel appropriate.
You don't don't say cause some damage around Duke Nukem, man. You say we're gonna go bust some balls or tear shit up or something like that.
It's also in this room where not Flying Mancubus makes his presence known. I always felt these guys were such a total ripoff of the Doom enemies. These guys, also like the pig cops, are priority targets due to their bullet sponginess. Not an easy fight, but if you are low on health ego at any time, make sure to trigger a kill on any of the kneeling pig cops, which, if I didn't mention before, replenishes said ego, so that at least gives these animations a function. A quick chat with General Graves reveals that the President super hates you and believes that Duke shot first, antagonizing the Cycloids. But Duke didn't do that. Why is the President like this? Will it factor into the plot? Not really.
However, we've got even more immediate problems. They're taking our women, Duke.
The next level starts off in Vegas in ruins, because Vegas is in ruins. Dylan is then presented to us, some old war buddy of Duke's, and is pretty much a parody that's actually pretty timely.
Hoffman. Oh, shit.
I'll have this released in like early 2009. God, if only they could have snuck John DiMaggio in there. I also think Dylan has one of the best lines of the game.
I knew that retirement bullshit was just bullshit.
Yeah, it's not amazing, but considering this happened earlier,
I know right where I'd stick him.
It's pretty good. Before Vegas in Ruins commences, however, it's time to take a shot at Halo. You know, Halo, the game 3D Realms copiously copied from.
We've got your green power armor over here, ready to go.
Power armor is for pussies.
Yeah, biting satire here. You're also suddenly given your next weapon, the Ripper Cannon, which, unlike the shotgun, isn't a patch on Duke 3Ds. It felt like a killing machine in the older games, but here it feels kind of weak and it chews through ammo way too fast, feeling like a step back in pretty much every way. This fight down a Vegas highway is a whole shitload of nothing, so moving on, Duke finds his way into an arena-shaped area for some type of arena area battle. This kicks off your first encounter with a Battle Lord, and in all honesty, it's pretty fun, mostly because you are again from out of nowhere giving my favorite video game genre, the RPG. This weapon is solid, does a good amount of damage, as it damn well should, but its ammo capacity is criminally low. Pelt the Battle Lord with any rockets, pipe bombs, or trip mines you got until you are treated with timeless 3D Realms humor.
Right in the jewels.
Phew, and that was a whole bunch of stuff, but thankfully, we're already more than halfway through the game, except we're not, because that was only the first 2 hours. Next time on Matt Nukem Forever.